Larys Strong revealed himself as one of the most interesting characters in House of the Dragon in the most recent episode, which is episode 6 for if you're watching this in the distant future. And I wanted to break down some of what his potential motivations could be, as well as his personal sigil, which was revealed this episode, and what that sigil might mean for him and his overall plots and current devices that he could use in order to gain information by any means. So yeah, if you enjoy this or any general content about House of the Dragon, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the time the season ends, and I'd really appreciate your help in doing so. So yeah, I'll jump into diving into the history of the Clubfoot. Larys Strong is introduced in the 3rd episode of House of the Dragon, where he attends King Viserys' hunt for his son Aegon's 2nd name day. The one action we see Larys take in this episode is to join a group of noble ladies in their chats, as he is unable to partake in the hunt due to his foot. He is also often called the Clubfoot, at least in the text, mostly due to this affliction that he has. After that, we see him again in the 5th episode, where he's passing information along to Alicent regarding Rhaenyra's activities, particularly that the Maesters had brought her moon tea following her affair with Criston Cole. This leads Alicent further down the path of distrusting Rhaenyra and builds up Larys as a potential ally of hers, sort of forsaking one friendship for another, or at least something resembling friendship. I'd call it more of an allyship overall. But yeah, between both of these two interactions, Larys is characterized as somebody who's very observant, quiet, and uses the information that he is able to observe very well and to advance his goals, whatever they may be. In episode 6, Larys takes some very drastic actions. We'd first see him at lunch with Alicent, just kind of having a discussion, and she casually mentions, "Oh, I wish my father were back as Hand," which he takes to mean, "Oh, let me kill my father, who is the current Hand, and Harwin, who has also been causing some trouble for the dynasty with Rhaenyra and the potential relationship between the two." So Larys is able to use some criminals from the black cells beneath the Red Keep. He cuts out their tongues and is able to have them burn down his seat of Harrenhal, killing his father, Lionel Strong, and his brother, Harwin Strong, in the process. This makes him Lord of Harrenhal and further advances the position of the Greens, as it just removes 2 of the strongest blacks from the court. The blacks being Rhaenyra's side in this conflict, while the Greens are Alicent's side. This is also quite an interesting move, just from Larys in general, particularly because in past episodes, he seemed to be rather close with, at the very least, his brother. This made me think that maybe it was not intended that Harwin was in this fire. We did see in this scene in the interior of Harrenhal that Harwin was pounding against what appeared to be a blocked door, locking Lionel in the building. So my thought is maybe the fire was just designed to kill Lionel to free up the position as Hand and give Harwin the position of Lord of Harrenhal. But I think that both of them being caught in the fire does make a lot of sense. They were both present. And furthermore, Harwin does seem like the type to try to save as many people as possible, as he seems quite noble from what we know of him. But yeah, the final scene of Larys that we see this episode is kind of terrifying, as he's giving a whole monologue about how love is a weakness and children are a weakness, and how these things are kind of able to be exploited by those who know how to do it. And all of this is being said to Alicent, who frankly looks fairly terrified, and understandably so. That was one of my favorite scenes in the episode, probably my favorite scene in the episode, just because it established Larys as such an interesting character and further adds complexity to his motivations and what he may want. So in this episode, we saw a lot of attention drawn to Larys' personal sigil, which was officially confirmed by HBO after the episode and on the website. That is the Firefly. There was both one on his cane as well as one on the lapel of each of the men that he removes the tongue of and has do his bidding at Harrenhal. I think this is quite interesting. We've seen a fair few schemers in our time in Westeros. We've seen Littlefinger, we've seen Varys. Now we see Larys, and each of them has an animal that they're sort of associated with, which I find quite interesting. Varys is the spider, weaving his webs and having his little birds everywhere, so he kind of has 2 animals at his disposal. Peter's personal sigil, not his house sigil, is a mockingbird, which kind of talks about mimicking the voices of those it hears, and kind of that can speak to his general relationship to power and how he kind of pretends to certain elements of that. Larys's personal sigil being the Firefly, I think, is quite interesting. The heaviest symbolic weight of the Firefly to me seems to be the idea of him lighting up the darkness. Maybe in his mind there is a darkness of some sort in Westeros or just in the world that he is trying to rid them of. Or rather, the interpretation that I would personally subscribe to is that the darkness is ignorance, and his knowledge that he gains from these mutes is lighting up the darkness. I would also be remiss to talk about Larys without mentioning the wonderful theory by Joe the Magician that he is a green seer and potentially a warg, similar to Bran, able to slip into the minds of animals and do their bidding. There's a lot of evidence supporting that in episode 6, particularly rats appearing during his speech at one point, almost as if he's controlling them to watch Viserys. And furthermore, when I first watched the episode, I thought the Firefly pins might have actually been real bugs, which could be quite interesting in that if he were able to control these bugs and see through their eyes while they're on anyone who's doing his bidding. I think that could be really cool, and it could lend something to his ability to just know everything and seemingly be everywhere. I will note that we had a similar situation in the history of Song of Ice and Fire. It'll take place about 70 years after the events of House of the Dragon, of another Master of Whispers, who is someone who's going to use animals and use their powers of green sight to enhance their espionage and general knowledge-gathering activities. That being Bloodraven, or the Three-Eyed Crow, or the Three-Eyed Raven, if you're a show watcher. But yeah, overall, I think the connections between those two are quite interesting. I think it would be cool if we see Larys, that name being so close tends to confuse me sometimes, using his abilities in a more concrete way and to achieve some end of something. Maybe he could warg a dragon at some point, as a lot of people thought the Bran might. As for his motivations, he seems to be entirely for the Greens at this point. He's been trying to endear himself to Alicent, though he might have shot himself in the foot, no pun intended, with that final speech to Alicent, as she seemed rightfully quite creeped out by it. However, he does now hold power over her, given the fact that he could just say, oh, Alicent ordered me to kill the Hand of the King and Harwin Strong, as she kind of implicitly implied that maybe this is something that could happen, but that was not ever really her intent. She just kind of wanted her dad back at court by any means, and this seems to be one way to do that. But yeah, overall, I think that Larys is quite tied to the Greens, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that loyalty evolves and potentially gaining insight as the show goes on as to why that loyalty exists. Is he purely an opportunist, as Littlefinger was, or does he have some tie to someone in the Greens that we don't know? Does he have a certain affection for Alicent? Was he mentored by Otto, or did he work in the Citadel? All of these are pretty distinct and unique possibilities, and I, for one, am quite excited to see which of them play out. But yeah, this has been the video on Larys Strong. What do you think of him? I've seen a lot of polarized opinions. Some people hate him, some people love him. He's kind of a Daemon-type character in that way, though much more people seem to be on the hate side than love, whereas the opposite is sort of the case for the Rogue Prince. If you enjoyed this video, like I said, be sure to leave a like, subscribe. Let me know what you think of Larys in the comments below, and thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.